Hello everybody, Carol Garrison here with Carol's Creative Escape. It is Monday, which means it's time for another Make It Monday. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon, I guess evening, for the Make It Monday. I am Carol Garrison and I'm coming to you live from White Bear Lake, Minnesota. I have been making cards for 30 some years, all sorts of different techniques, but most recently and for the longest period of time, using stamps, papers, ribbons, and things like that to create beautiful cards that I can share with others. I am not affiliated with any company. I am not selling anything. I am simply here to spread the joy of card making one card at a time. And that can be through encouraging you to mail a card, helping you find that creativity so that you can make a card. Just having fun and finding a way to kind of escape from the everyday things through card making. So I hope everybody has had a great week. We had unseasonably hot and humid weather here over the weekend. Grateful that we missed out on some of the storms that have hit other parts of the country. That did give me a chance to spend a little more time in my craft area than I normally would because it was simply too hot to be outside even. And other than that, it was a fairly uneventful week. So let's go ahead and jump in, and I'm going to start showing you how to make this card. Excuse me a minute while I start to flip-flop stuff around here. You can see the mess that my work area is. And I'm trying to do a little bit different on my camera setup since I've been having problems making my screen larger. I'm not convinced that is going to totally do it, but I am closer than I have been. And so we're just going to go with that. I think starting next week, my goal is to be posting all my videos on YouTube, possibly going live through YouTube. I will keep you all informed of that change. That is primarily being done because Facebook has made changes to their policies. I don't have any issues with what they're doing. It's just from a time perspective, since I'm not in this to do anything other than share with you cards, I need to kind of monitor my time as well and make sure I'm using it effectively. And so I may have to just do up a couple changes on how I'm sharing my videos with you. So I'll get some of my clutter moved out of the way here. That's the problem when I can't go close up on what I'm working on. You see a much larger piece of my desk area, and it's a lot is usually hidden around my work area. So let me go ahead and get started on this particular card. I will tell you, this die and stamp set is from Stampin Up. I looked before we went live and I couldn't find it, so it's possible it's one that has retired. I will post the name so that you can connect with it once I get it figured out. I just didn't have it when I went live. But this particular card is one that was inspired by my sister on one of our craft weekends. She made a card very similar to this, not quite exact, and I fell in love with it. I don't own the stamp or die set, but I die cut several sets that I could recreate her card, and she did hers in the lavender Highland Heathery type purple tones. And so I kind of recreated that, sort of, and I am going to now show you how to make this card. So, and again, if you have other large dies and you've got floral images, you don't need this die set, this stamp set to make this card. Any card that I'm showing you, you can find a similar die, similar shape, and floral image to put on the side. It can be one piece like this is, or it could be multiple pieces. You can recreate the layout. It may not be exactly the same, but I try to show cards that you can create, hopefully with things that you have in your stash. So I've really dug back in my stash just a little bit, borrowing the stamp and die set. And in fact, I didn't even borrow it. I just used it at the craft weekend we were at. So I don't even, that's why I don't have the name available to me right at my fingertips, but I will get it for you. To make this card, you need a piece of 5.5 by 8.5 cardstock scored at 4.25. You need a whoa, I'm not sure what that red spot is. Good thing we don't need to worry about that. You need a piece of cardstock that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then this white layer of cardstock measures 4 by 5 1/4. So we're just going to have that little border. And then I die cut it out. And I've got actually this insert piece, which is really nice. I have a piece of designer series paper that's quite old, but I love that gingham, so I'm going to recreate this purple version in blue. This piece measures 3 1/4 by 3 1/4. And then of course I have my scrap basic white pieces for the sentiment and the greetings. And then I also die cut several bunches of leaves out of the green tones when I had access to this set. And then I've got that little banner to add some enhancements. And then I haven't decided yet if I'm going to do this blue ribbon or this white ribbon on my card. So I'm just going to set those aside and I'll figure that out later. Let's go ahead and get started. The very first thing we're going to do actually for making this card is we're going to be coloring in our image here. And that piece is kind of messed up, so let me put it here. I am using alcohol-based markers. You can use regular markers on this. I just happen to be using these because I had the right colors and I could do kind of the different tones. Whenever I'm opening up alcohol-based markers, I will always do it off of my paper in case it blurps a little bit. And so we are just going to go around and start coloring in flowers. Now, when you use alcohol-based markers, it is important that you also use a water-based ink. And the reason that is important is if I used an alcohol-based ink like StazOn, for example, I would run into some issues with the black ink smearing or kind of running, actually. And we want to avoid that if we can, because it really fuzzies up your lines. So by using opposite inks, these are alcohol-based. The Memento ink that I used here is a water-based ink. And so the two are going to kind of repel each other and not cause one to run into the other when I'm going over it with my markers. So that's just a little tip. I am kind of letting the layout determine how much blending is going to occur and shading, mostly because I am not super talented at using the blending, but I do like to color. Every once in a while I can get it to work really well, but mostly I use it for the colors and admire what other people put together when they are able to successfully blend colors. And I'm just kind of randomly coloring flowers. Trying not to use the word too here. I didn't realize how often I was saying that. So I've just got two sets of blends that are in the same family. One just happens to be a lighter shade than the other. And this is one that kind of blurped. I may flip it over to the wide tip because sometimes it can affect how it works. So I'm just using the broader tip now. And this would be the darker of the two tones. Sometimes there's a bigger difference than other times, and usually after it dries it can be more noticeable. And so again, I'm just finishing the flowers that I've got on here. It's actually kind of relaxing sometimes to be able to color. I can't decide if I like using these or just regular markers. I think it really depends on the project I'm working on. And even more importantly than that, what markers I have available to use, because that can determine a lot too, can't it? So I'm going to now pull up my green, and again, I'm just going to randomly start coloring leaves. You know, maybe do kind of every other or something like that. Sometimes the big leaves, sometimes the little leaves. But this doesn't take super long in terms of the coloring. It will dry pretty quick. Another caution, if you are using these alcohol-based markers, you need to make sure that you're working on a surface that isn't going to be ruined as the ink soaks through. And you definitely don't want to use these if the back piece of whatever you're coloring will be visible in the card that you're making. And I'll show you why in just a moment here when I flip this over. All right, then I'll come back in with the darker tone. And as you can tell, I am really trying hard to open these up over something that is not my project. It doesn't happen often, but especially if I haven't used a color for a while, I do find that there just is a little bit of alcohol that settles in the cap, and it needs to kind of be moved on. The other thing I would encourage too is don't stress if you can't stay perfectly in the line when you're coloring. I've got a couple spots on here where I didn't, and it's okay. In the end, nobody's really going to notice anything, and you just need to kind of let yourself go with it. I'll add a few highlights on those bigger leaves. And there we go. Maybe I'll make that a darker one too. That's it for coloring. Like I said though, it does run through, soak through, so you want to make sure you're working on a surface that may get some on there, but you can see why you wouldn't want that showing through on your card either that you're making. And you know what? I just thought of something that I wanted to put on this card that I did not. And I just need to grab it. It's my friend Stella. I have not used this recently, so let's see if it's gonna squirt out. Again, this is another product that you will love, but you do not want to squirt it out over the paper you're working on, because every once in a while, you know how like when you're working with glue and it kind of blurps? I don't know what the word is, but this will do that, and then you'll end up with this big pile of glitter that is really hard to get spread out thin enough. Wing Castell is probably one of my favorite products for card making because it does add a little sparkle to your cards without having to deal with all of the glittery stuff. I don't know if you can. It doesn't help that this one is almost out too. So I don't know. In person you can see it. There's just a little sheen and sparkle when the light hits it. to the flowers. So that's my friend Wink of Stella. I know I've got some more somewhere. I just have to find it. I'll leave that out so I remember to get it. All right, so then I want to also repeat that same thing on this blue one. The table is squeaking as I'm shaking it a little bit here. So that's how quick and easy it is to put Wink of Stella onto your card. On this one, I may even add some to those big leaves and make them pop. Just a little more. It's just a way to add a little pizzazz to your project. Doesn't take long and it dries really quick. And again, there's just a little bit of glittery sheen on that. All right, we're going to leave that out, like I said, so that I can find it. We'll let that sit and finish drying while we do the rest of this card. So we will fold it in half. Now, a tip I recently learned, and I haven't used it enough to know how effective it is, but it intrigued me, is instead of starting at the top and working your way down, you get a better lining up of your card if you start in the middle and work your way up and down. It's supposed to line things up a little bit better, and I would say on this card, either I cut it really well or that theory works. So let's go ahead and start layering this card. It is very simple to assemble. Sorry, I got a little piece of tape on the end of my finger. All right, so we're just going to do my Z for the base, and I happen to get the side where that red spot is. I'm not worried about it because it's going to be covered up by everything. And my tip when you're putting layers on is look at opposite corners. If they're even, then these two corners should be even as well. Okay, so we've got that first layer on. Then the next thing we're going to do is adhere this to the back side of here. You can kind of tell when you've die cut something what's the back side by just feeling it, and it's more raised on the back side, what I consider to be the back side. And so that's the side that I am going to attach this gingham to. Now I am getting out the green glue here, my mono adhesive. I don't do a lot of gluing as my preferred style. I like adhesive just because I tend to get a little bit messier when I've got glue. But I wanted to have some wiggle room to be able to move this to get it lined up in the right spot. And so I've opted to go with glue. So initially I'm going to put it down to cover that opening. And then before I really press it down, I'm going to flip it over. I want to make sure the gingham is straight or reasonably straight, and I'm actually really happy with how that ended up. So now I'll press that adhesive down, and that will just keep this piece in place. All right, then the next step on this card, and one thing I am going to do different is, whoops, I made this card vertical. I'm going to do this card horizontal to let you see that it works either way. We're just going to change up how we lay things out a little bit. Oops, I will go back to my adhesive. And I am going to put just a little bit in those two spots. And we're going to put this on. Make sure I got it opening up right before I adhere it. Kind of right here. Actually, nope, I'm going to do it this way. And again, centering it on that blue piece. I wanted the blue just to create a slight border around my card. The next thing I am going to do is start looking at how I'm going to place my flowers. Now, I didn't have quite as much room, so I covered up more of the gingham with this layout. This one is going to give me a little bit more room, and I can have more of that showing. It's all your preference and not a whole lot more. Then I'm going to take this flower or leaf piece and I'm going to put some here, and I'll tear off that little bit and kind of put it here. And then I'm going to put this piece back on so I can see how my greens, whoops, are working with that. Because I do want these leaves to show, but I also don't want them running off the card. All right, and then we're going to put that one like so. Now what I did is I'm going to pull my flowers off, but I'm holding my leaves so that they stay in place with minimal movement. I'm going to come back in with adhesive on the back of the flowers that we just colored. And I am putting a fair amount of adhesive on here. And I am going to put that down right on top of my leaves. That way I'm not having to try to get tape and adhesive under here. Now I want to be careful now that my leaves are in place that I'm not popping up those leaves. So I am coming back in with just a little bit of adhesive, putting just a pinpoint dot on the leaves like so. That just helps them stay in place and not lift up. That is strictly optional and up to you if you want to do that. I'm just a little more comfortable getting those more adhering to my card a little bit better. Okay, then we're going to take our sentiment and we'll put it right here with just that little, a little bit of that bandana thing, banner thing hanging out. I'm trying to decide where I want it. You know, for this one, I am still going to put it here. I may not use this. No, I'm going to because I kind of want to cover that stem up. All right, so I'm going to adhere this. Once I kind of have an idea of where this is going to go, I'm going to put this down. Get it on there straight, and then I'm going to pop the dimensional backs off of here. Funny, I don't know if you can see, but my dimensionals are a little bit rough on a couple of these. One of my cats decided she wanted to chew on these, so I've got several sheets that have teeth mark in them. Some lost the wax backings. She just gets into everything. Oh well. All right, so we're going to put that on, and then I've deliberately left some space white here because I want to come back in with another bunch of leaves. I'm actually going to trim this off right at the end, and I am going to take my glue again. When I'm doing really fine tip, I do like to do, you know, small areas. I do like to use the glue. Simply because my adhesive is a little bit bigger and I end up getting more adhesive on the edges of stuff than I want. So we're just going to put a little bit of glue on the back of that, and I'm going to put it on here to the greetings. I do have some blue rhinestones, so we can add a couple rhinestones to this. I don't want the rhinestones to become the focus, so I am going to go with ones that'll more easily blend in, and I think that's going to be this color. And just kind of randomly place them on here. And then I think I'm going to put one little one right here on there as well. It just adds a little, but doesn't put on a whole lot of extra. And then the thing that I have left is my bow. So I've got that, and I just don't like how that one looks, so we're going to move that on. And the next bow that I have is just with this little white ribbon, and again I'm going to stick it kind of up here, and our card is done. It's kind of fun because you get to color and do a little bit, and I do love working with gingham paper. I just think gingham is so pretty. So here you go. Here's my two variations. Again, I've got one that is vertical, one that is horizontal. Same layout, but it gives a different look. I had fun coloring. I think there's a bigger difference in colors on this one that I kind of like that I didn't get on the blue, but I'm okay with it either way. So I hope you like this card. Real quick again, I'll give you measurements because it's basic layers. Pick a die similar in size. This is about 3.5 inches, that opening, so that as you're looking at dies, you can kind of pick something like that. Pick a floral image. Again, it can be individual and you can build it, or it can be a solid piece. There's lots of stamp options available for that, regardless of where you get your stamps from. So the basic card base again is 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4. The colored cardstock layer here is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. This white layer that I die cut off of is 4 by 5 1/4. And these were just all die cut from scraps of paper that I had available. And I used alcohol-based pens for coloring, and the rest is just normal stamping. These two pieces, and then that stays on, or excuse me, Memento ink for the black ink on that flower. I hope you enjoyed this card, and if you have an opportunity to make something like this, please do, and be sure to post it in the comments below so that I can see this. Again, as I have been talking about the last few weeks, Facebook has made a few changes, which isn't making it as effective for me to be doing my videos and then having to upload them because they don't stay on Facebook anymore. And so I am going to be transitioning over to doing videos on YouTube. I just have to do it a couple times in practice before I can go live in YouTube. So for the next couple of weeks, please bear with me. It is very possible that there's going to be a couple of pre-recorded videos out here, just as I'm practicing and learning the art of doing videos on YouTube. Take care, everybody. Have a great time. I will also make sure to post my YouTube channel in the comments and at the top of this Facebook page so that you are able to find me. Take care, everyone. Have a great week, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.